Hello everybody and welcome to Vaidya's Chess Hub. In today's lecture we are going to cover all the remaining 8 checkmate patterns that are there. You can see the names of those patterns on your screen, and also this is the 8th part of this series. Now the reason I have decided to go through all these topics in just one lecture is that they are not the big checkmate patterns like Greco's mate or Anastasia's mate, which has some deep concepts. These are pretty simple ones. Some of them are at least known to you. When you start playing chess, you learn them first, like the fool's mate or the scholar's mate, and some might be new. So let us go through all of them. So for today's lecture, I don't think that there will be a concrete pattern. Like maybe we will just go through some examples, because if I had to cover all this, we have to go with the same pattern for all of this pattern. Then it will take a lot of time if we look at games and then examples. So I think there will be some games that I will just go through, and there will be some examples. As I can see my database, there are around 26 examples for this 8 patterns. So there is a lot of material to be covered in this video. So let us go one by one through each one of them. Now let's start with the suffocation mate. Now this is the first checkmate pattern that we are going to discuss. Now in concept, it is similar to the smothered mate that we have seen, I guess, in first checkmate pattern video. In the smothered mate, what happens is usually only the knight checkmates the king when the king is boxed in because of all of his own pieces. In the suffocation mate, it's very similar to that. So let's jump to the board and see how it works. So the suffocation mate usually involves this dangerous bishop that suffocates the king, and that's the reason we call it a suffocation mate, because the king is suffocated here because of this bishop, since the bishop covers all the escape squares for the king. And now the mechanism is very similar to the smothered mate. So if you remember, in the smothered mate we used to check with the knight. So in this case as well, we just have to play the move knight to h6, and this is the basic structure of the suffocation mate. So this bishop is the one that suffocates the king, and knight checks the king and ends the game. So if I put a pawn in g7, and let's say one or some, let's say knight on g7 and some piece on h8, then knight h6, we would have called it a smothered mate, right? So in the suffocation mate, it's kind of a smothered mate, but the squares are covered by some other pieces as well. So usually involves bishop and knight. So this is the basic structure. Now let's go to the next example of the suffocation mate. Now this is the typical motif in such positions when you have this bishop and this queen lined up on this long diagonal. So this is white to move and checkmate in 3 moves. I would advise you to pause the video and try to solve it. It's easy. Mate in 3 is not usually very difficult, so you can definitely solve it. And since we know the topic already, this is a big hint. So yeah, I will be telling the answer in this one as well. So we start with the move queen g7. By the way, I will tell you which the answers to which positions are supposed to be written in the comment section. So for this one, queen g7 is the brilliant move that goes to the checkmate. So king takes g7 is forced, and now the most powerful weapon in chess, according to me, is the double check, when the bishop and knight both are checking the king. And now king has only one square to go to, which is g8. And once it goes to g8, we already have the pattern of the suffocation mate. You can see that this bishop is controlling these two crucial squares, so we just need a knight check to deliver the suffocation mate. And there are two ways to checkmate the king. In fact, here knight e7 would be checkmate, and also knight h6 is checkmate. I like knight h6 more. You may be liking knight e7 more, so it depends on your test. But yeah, both of these lead to the checkmate. So this was another case of the suffocation mate, where it starts with the queen sacrifice in order to bring the king into this bishop's diagonal, and that's the power of this bishop on this long diagonal. So that's the reason the openings like Sicilian Dragon and like Catalans are very strong openings, where this Fianchetto bishop is the key to success very often. So yeah, this was the second example. Now let's go to the next one. Wait, I think we must have one puzzle here. So let me try to see if there is a puzzle. Actually, there is one game that I wanted to show you. Let me try to bring that game first. And then there is a puzzle for Suffocation Mate. Yeah, this is the game that I wanted to show you. William Steinitz is playing with the white pieces, and this is a blindfold simul actually that Steinitz gave in 1885. So let's go through the game to see what happened in this game. So e4 c5, Sicilian defense, and knight f3 e6. We already know, we have already have discussed this particular opening variation, the Taimano variation. But in this game, knight c3 was played, not going for the main line open Sicilian with the move d4, a bit of a side line. And usually black plays d5 since white has not grabbed the opportunity to go for open Sicilian. He himself does that and gets this perfect center. And now I would play d4 here probably. That's the best move here. Usually, I also have some games in the tournament where some players plays with white against me, and they usually don't go for d4. You have, if you have to fight for the center here, guys, I have seen many of you go d3, and then I get d4 and I get a space advantage. So usually you want to stop black from going d4 in such structure. So bishop b5 was played here, bishop d7. This is another way to play queen e2, and after bishop e7 he just simply won the pawn on d5. So you can see, since Steinitz is playing a simultaneous here, he probably wants to keep more pieces on the board instead of equalizing by playing some moves. He just wants to go for the opponent's king here, as we can see here. Knight c6 was played, and now d3, a6, bishop went back, and now after bishop g4, c3, stopping any knight d4 activity. So b5 was played, bishop b3, and knight a5, a typical Ruy Lopez reaction to get rid of this strong bishop on b3. So Steinitz first exchanged on e7, and black thought that he will be clever here. He took on f3, queen take f3, and then first eliminated this bishop since there was a threat. He could have actually played queen e7. I don't know why he didn't do that, but he played knight b3 first. Uh, Styles found this knight c6 move just to gain a tempo on a queen for one move. Queen to c8 was played, and this clever move knight c6 actually will cause some issue later in the game, as we will see. And the pawn was just knight was just recaptured, and usually this opens up the a file, rook on the a file as well. So white rook hasn't moved, but it has already been activated on the a file. Knight f6, castle. And now you would like to castle here from black side, but now you can see that this knight c6 will move has caused the queen to go to c8, and the queen on such an unfortunate position. In this position, by the way, when he played knight to c6, he could have gone to some other squares as well, but then this rook could have been potentially hanging. So he preferred c8, and but now you can see here black badly wants to castle, but he can't castle in this position because after castling there will be a knight fork and you will lose a queen. So that's the point, that this knight on c6 is actually annoying. It's stopping black from castling, and if rook e1 check happens in this position, black is going to hate his position because the king will be stuck somewhere in between. So queen b7 was played, trying to step out of fork, and if given a chance to castle, of course Steinitz doesn't give that chance. He plays rook e1 check, making king stay in the center. Now you should never think about moves like king d7. First of all, rook e7 I think is the cleanest way to win here. Apart from that, there can be also some checkmate ideas, but this is the strongest, at least wins the queen. So king has to go to f8, and now in this position actually I would advise you to pause the video and think what Steinitz could have done in this position. In fact did it. So it's white to play and win. He already has a win. See, it's very important. The purpose of this series is going to be to spot a moments where you should feel that there should be a checkmate. This development of the feeling for the position where there is already checkmate should be developed when you watch all these 8 patterns, and now we have covered the 36 patterns, and these examples I have filtered them, and I have chosen only the ones that that are the nice ones. So yeah, this is a nice one, white to move and win. You can pause the video and think. So in this position, Steinitz played the brilliant move, queen takes f6. Now this came out of nowhere, right? Suddenly he just captured the knight on f6, which was sufficiently guarded, like it was well protected by this healthy pawn chain, the pawn on g7. So queen takes f6 is just superb understanding of the position, that this knight, rook, and bishop are going to cause the damage here. So g takes f6 is of course forced, you can't stay piece down. So this was played. Bishop to h6 check, king g8. And here again I would actually again advise you to pause the video and try to find a continuation. Now since the situation has been clarified, it's more about using the creativity. In the earlier one it was more about using the creativity to find this move queen takes f6, but now it's some kind of a brute force that you have to calculate like an engine here. Actually there are more than one way to win this. There are actually two moves that wins. Knight e7 should win, I think, pretty easily here, which just wins a queen basically with the idea of suffocation mate. Now you can see this time the bishop is not on the long diagonal, but this time it is on this short diagonal, but it still does the job of suffocating the king. So yeah, so knight e7 will basically pick up a queen. That's the easier way to win, but of course you have to go for the forcing one, and rook e3 is the point. That's the most brilliant move in this position. So what rook e3 does is that rook e3 threatens rook g3 and it's a checkmate. And you might recall this checkmate pattern we have learned in the last lecture itself, right? This is the Pillsbury mate that we have seen. So white is threatening Pillsbury mate now. So black played the move queen c7, and now comes a tactic known as the overloaded piece. So there is some tactic known as the overloading or overloaded piece. So this is white to move and win again, and now it's a forced checkmate in two moves. So it depends on which checkmate pattern you like. If you like the if you like the Pillsbury mate, go for knight e7. Queen e7 will be forced because this is a suffocation mate if not if the knight is not captured, and then we will have the Pillsbury mate. So this will be Pillsbury mate for those who like Pillsbury, and if you want a suffocation mate, you can start with rook g3. Again, queen takes g3 is forced, and now no need to recapture this queen. We can just go knight e7 and it's a suffocation mate. So there are actually two choices at this point. So this was the brilliant game by William Steinitz. Now let's go to the puzzle. So this will be the puzzle for you. Wait, not this one. Yeah, this is the puzzle. This is white to move, and I would actually say that it's checkmate in 5 moves. But usually I don't like to tell that it's a checkmate in so and so moves. I recommend students to solve it just by looking at this, but just by consider that you are playing with that side and try to find the answer. So this is white to move and win. You can pause the video, arrange the chess set and then solve, or you can just look at this and solve. It's all up to you. So yeah, this is the suffocation mate exercise. Now let's go to the next pattern. So our next pattern is going to be swallow's tail mate. Okay, so this is the example that I have decided to choose. Now if you see if it is white to move, then it's checkmate in one with the move queen c5, and this is the particular pattern that we have already seen in the earlier lectures. So you know the name of this pattern. Well, if you don't recall it, I would advise you to go back to the previous episodes and try to see which checkmate pattern is this one. This particular tail-like appearance, we have already seen it. So in the swallow's tail mate, this is not the swallow's tail mate. The swallow's tail mate is when it's black to play, and in this position, if I put it with black to move, then queen f3 would lead to the checkmate, and this is known as the swallow stalemate. So there are two checkmate patterns that have been given the name of that are named like a tailmate. So this also appears like a bird and its tail, so they are just named that way. This is very similar to the epaulette mate. If you remember the epaulette mate, if this king was on h3 and the queen f3 checkmate, that would we would have called it an epaulette mate because of this particular construction. So in the swallow's tailmate, it's very similar to the epaulette mate, I will say, when the piece is protected by some another piece, very important, and the king is in such an unfortunate position where the skip squares are taken away by its own pieces. So this is the swallow stalemate, and now let's see some examples of this particular checkmate. Wait, I have to get another board. So yeah, this will be the example. Let me just. Okay, so this is the game that I wanted to show you. This is by Max Urba with playing with the white pieces. All of you know him. He's the former world champion. So let's see this game. What happened? E4, E5, knight F3, knight C6, knight C3, knight F6. So a well-known four knights, four knights game it is. And here there are two ways to play for white, either to play bishop B5 or to play D4. These two are the main moves. So in the game, D4 was played, the Scotch variation of the four knights. E4, knight D4, and bishop to B4 was played. Knight takes C6, bishop takes C3, B takes C3, B takes C6. All of this is well-known theory. Bishop D3, H6, E5, a typical move in Scotch. You usually chase this knight away to D5, and white got, I will say, even a slightly better position immediately because of these bishops, and he is stopping black from castling, because castling will run in here in some bishop H6 ideas. So king F8 was played, just guarding the G7 pawn. Short castle D6 attacking the queen. So queen to D4 was played. Bishop to E6. F4. This is the typical idea to get in F5, F6 in such positions. We have already seen in Lolly's Mate how that is quite an important attacking concept. So C5 was played, counter attacking. Queen F2. Again, the line of force is going to be the F5. So queen belongs on F2 in this position. So F5, EF6, knight F6 was played. Bishop to D2, bringing the another, trying to bring the another rook to the E1 on the open file. So C4 was played, bishop to G6, and white. I already like white's position here. His pieces are quite well placed. Bishop F7 is actually good move, trying to exchange pieces. Whenever you are your position is weak, you should try to exchange pieces and try to simplify the position. So f5 was played. So if black decides to take, then then the pawn will come to g6, and we know that this pawn on g6 is quite a dangerous piece. So knight e4, attacking these two pieces, queen d4, and black is continuing to exchange a lot of pieces, because if we get into something like a rook endgame, then I think black's chances of surviving will improve. So queen f6 was played, rook a e1, king to g8. See, because this king is uncastled here, black is trying to exchange pieces. His rook is not going to come into play very soon, while white's pieces are all active and all have good positions here. So that's the reason black is trying to stay with this king. Black is trying to exchange a lot of pieces, basically, first of all, to in order to release the tension in the position. And white is exactly doing the opposite. White is trying to build up the tension in the position by making the maximum out of these pieces that he has developed. So black goes on trading even more pieces, and now queen d5 check, king h7. Now the reason white gave away this pawn in this particular position, actually this rook e3 is quite a nice move, because he has seen that after this pawn disappears, even though it disappears, it still opens up some files for the rooks to operate, and he immediately saw this line that queen d5, the king has to go to h7, and if black is given time to, let's say, play rook f8, rook f6, and bring another rook to f8, he would do fine here. But white's attack is here quite fast. So rook g3 was played, and already some kind of threats are there. Rook f7 threats and rook g7 threats are there. So white's position is already, I think, here much better. And black played queen takes c2, and this is the position. I would advise you to pause the video and think, what would you do here as white? Again, just to give the hint, we are discussing the swallow stalemate, so I believe that's a big hint. Yes, he played the brilliant move rook takes g7, and black resigned. Just because of this, king takes g7, queen f7 would lead to checkmate. Again, this is a particular swallow tail pattern that we have seen in the previous case. Black's pieces in fact stop the black king from running away anywhere, and the king is just stuck there, and that is the checkmate. So this was a brilliant game by Max Arva. Now let's go to next game. Now, this is the game of Harry Nelson Pillsbury. We have already known this game. Now, this is a blindfold simul played in Montreal, Canada in 1894. And between two interesting players, this is Pillsbury versus Frank Marshall. You must have heard the name Frank Marshall as well. And now let me actually go to the critical position in this game, because this is quite a long game. Actually, I will just zip through the moves so that you get idea. I will not go through each of the opening details here. This was the King's Gambit, that much I can say, and this is the very famous counter attack that is there. D5 is a nice move, and then just both the sides are currently developing their pieces. I would just like to get to one position. So this was an interesting discover attack that was played by white in order to gain this bishop, and still black has a good position here with his pieces all centralized. Some bishop f2 threats are there possible. You might castle long and play some knight f5, and black's pieces will be completely dominating in the center. So that's what happened. Rook g8 was played, and black's position looks here like is much better. It's because white king is stuck in the center. This knight, queen, this bishop is currently out of play, but you never know, it might come into play someday. And also this knight and rook are active, and black's king is first of all safe, so black stands better here, I think. Queen h6, at least practically speaking, he is much better. Queen f4, rook g8, rook to g1 was played, knight g6. I want to jump to the critical position, so this all was played. c5, trying to open up this bishop, taking the advantage of the pin as well here. f5 was played, ef6, and in this position black saw this interesting continuation. So we will start the explanation from this point, but you have already got the feel of the game, that the strategies how they were going. So if we look at this position, black has the rook on the e file, which is standing quite nicely. The knight is good in the center, the queen is good, the bishop, if it opens up, is a very good piece. So black decides to go for rook takes g4 here. Now this is a blindfold simul, so I don't think I can like, this is maybe a practical way that black choose to get a draw basically. So the point is rook takes g4, h takes g4, knight g3 check. This is the point of black's play, that he has this particular move. And now if white plays the move king f2, I think black has to come back with his knight, check the king. White king has to go back, and knight g3, and it would end in a draw by threefold repetition. But the reason, of course, is, I think the reason white player missed this thing is that he thought that his knight is free. Why can't I take it? So this is the puzzle for you. This is black to play and win now. He was not. He shouldn't have captured that knight. That was a poisonous knight, if you can call it. And then, yeah, it's black to play and win now. So the story I see here, that Pillsbury is playing with white and Marshall is playing with the black pieces. So it must be that Pillsbury is playing a simul here, because both of them are strong players. So I believe white player usually plays all the games in the simul. So that must be the way around. And blindfolded, this it's very easy to miss such thing, that you have queen g3, and after the queen g3, it's in fact black who is winning. So that might be slightly surprising for him. So when here is straightforward, you go for queen c4 check, and after queen c4 check, king f2, we once again have the swallow stalemate. See, whenever you see this kind of construction with the king and the rest of the white pieces, you immediately see that queen e2 is going to lead to a checkmate, just because of with the help of these two pieces, and that is the checkmate here. Just queen to e2, and it's game over. So this was another example of the swallow's stalemate, and yeah, I think this was the last one. Let me see if I have a puzzle for you in this one. Yeah, I definitely have a puzzle in this one. Okay, this is the puzzle. This is white to move and win. So first one we have seen, that is a checkmate in 5. I guess I mentioned it. So there was a puzzle on suffocation mate. There is also puzzle for swallow stalemate. This is white to move and win, and the answer for this one also you are going to type in the chat section. Okay, so I think we should go to the next pattern now, which is the triangle mate. Now, one thing I would like to tell you before I go to the triangle mate is that you can see that we have already seen the kill box mate, right? We have seen the kill box mate where the queen and rook form a box and inside which the king is trapped. So usually these three patterns are associated with each other. So the kill box mate, the railroad mate, and the triangle mate. Now these three patterns are, they emerge from one another. We can say that these three are very related to each other, and yeah. So in this particular video, we are going to see the triangle mate and the railroad mate. So let me explain to you what is the triangle mate first, and when I cover the railroad mate, I will explain you the differences between all three of them. So let's start with the triangle mate. What is that one first? So let's go to the position. So this is the triangle mate when white plays the move queen to f5 check. Now the reason we call it a triangle, this is the triangle. So triangle, you already know it has three sides. So this is the triangle that we are looking for here. If you remember in the kill box mate, the king is on usually g8, the white queen is on f6, and the rook is on h8. Like this is how the kill box mate works. This is how the triangle mate works. So in the railroad mate, once we start checking the king and once we drive it to the edge of the board, it would either result in the kill box mate or it would result in this triangle mate. So let's see some examples of triangle mate. Let me go to the next example. Okay. So this is the way you can see now. This is the combination of the railroad mate combined with the triangle mate. So in this case, now what is a railroad mate? Just to give an introduction about that, when this king is, we can call it a railway track, and when it is on this railway track, we can, by using our two major pieces, we can drive the king to the edge of the board, and that is usually called as the railroad mate. So we start with rook f3, king g4, queen h3, king g5, rook f5 check, king g6, and queen h5. And you can see from the railroad mate we have ended up in this triangle mate. So triangle mate, the construction is very easy. The queen and rook are there, and the queen guards the rook, and queen covers all the important square. So this rook covers two, and yeah, this particular pawn on g7 makes it a triangle. So if it would have ended in a kill box mate, now you can see the difference that this railroad mate concept of checking, alternate checking with the rooks and queen, can either lead to the triangle mate if there is a pawn on g7, let's say, or on b2, or basically on the knight 2 file, or it can be anywhere on the second rank. It would result in a triangle mate, and if there is no pawn, then it will lead to the kill box mate. So this is the railroad mate followed by the triangle mate. Now let's go to the example from the game. Now I will go to this particular position. Now let's look at it from the black's perspective. So queen take d3 was played, knight d5, rook to f1 check was played, king g2, and in this position black found a spectacular way to win this game. I would advise you to pause the video and think what would you do here as black. It's really interesting, and this shows the understanding of checkmate pattern, how it is very important. The more patterns you know, the calculation process becomes very easy. So this is black to play and win. So black found an amazing attacking sequence here. He started off with the move rook takes g3. That is absolutely brilliant. This queen is just guarding these two rooks, and the rooks are destroying the king here. So what's the point after h takes g3? Now we see the point that queen f3 check. Now this sets up this very nice combination between these two pieces, and after king h3 or king h2, it doesn't really matter. Actually king h2, it would is just checkmate in one move, queen h1 checkmate, so that's out of question. So white tried king h3, but now we again see the association between this rook and queen, like how powerful they can be, and it's just mate in two with the help of triangle mate. The triangle is here kind of reversed, but yeah, it's still a triangle. So again, it's black to play and mate into queen h5 check. The only move is king g2, and now queen h1 check. So you can see that this rook and queen, when there is a one square distance between them, this particular triangle we can see here yet again. And this queen is again doing all the same job of covering all these escape squares, while the rook is guarding this too. And this wonderful duo is leading to a checkmate here. Okay, so let's go to the next example. Now this will be puzzle, I think, for all of you. Let me see. So this we are going to look at from white's perspective, and yeah, yeah. So in this position, it's actually very easy. But yeah, it's mate in two. White to move and mate in two with the help of triangle mate. So yeah, it's pretty simple, I think. Queen g8 check, king f6, and queen g7. And now this is not the usual triangle. Now, those of who are already in the, I can say the seventh standard and above, will probably know that this is a right angled triangle. In mathematics, we call it the one with the 90 degrees. So it's a triangle made, but with another type of triangle here. Or if you see it from like 45-degree angle, it will exactly look like a triangle. So it's still a triangle, but looks like some kind of a different triangle this time. But it's still a triangle mate, and yeah, so this was about the triangle mate. So you can see that the topic, the triangle mate, is not as deep as the Greco's mate, where there were a lot of attacking ideas like sacrificing the knight on g6 and then sacrificing the rook. There are not such deep concepts in triangle mate. It's just the construction that has been given a name, and that's the reason we are going through these topics very quickly. And the next one is also a similar one. So this next one is Vukovic mate, so named after a player known as Vukovic. So we will start with the first example between the game of Levon Aronian and Wesley So from Norwich's 2019. So our first example of Vukovic mate is from the game of Levon Aronian versus Wesley So, played in Norwich's in 2019, and he played knight h6, king h8, and you can see that he's 2 pawns down, but Aronian has some compensation with due to his active pieces, and he played the move rook a7 here, targeting the a6 pawn. And in this position, both the players were actually in time trouble, and something rare happened in this position. Wesley So blundered. He played the move knight to f5, and Levon Aronian actually managed to checkmate Wesley So on the board with the move rook to h7. And this is the Vukovic mate checkmate pattern, when this knight and rook in this particular configuration checkmate the king. See that the knight is guarding this square and the rook is checking the king as well as guarding this square. And the third piece is usually important, that protects the rook, which is this pawn, which is more than 1 point. A pawn on the sixth rank, as I have always said in the case of Lolly's mate as well, it is worth, I will say, 3 or 4 points in this case as well. So these three pieces are important in delivering the Vukovic checkmate. Now let's go to the next example. This is the game between Zukova and Anna Sherevich, and I will just like to show you how by knowing this particular pattern, it can help you to in your technical decisions as well. So in this position, she played the move knight f6, and now you can see the king is nicely cut off here with the knight and the rook. And now after the move rook h4, the solution would come easily to you, that you just need a pawn on e6 and then rook f7 would be checkmate. And she just played e5, rook h1, e6, rook b5, king g6, and king to h6. And you can see by just three pieces we are able to checkmate the king. Rook f7 is unstoppable, and she won quite easily. So by knowing this endgame pattern, you can create a mating threads in the end games as well. So this was our second example for the Vukovic mate. Now let's go to the third one. Now this is the game of Spassky. Again we will see the same example as the last one. You can see that white has two pawns, a knight and a rook potentially joining on the 7th rank. So there are chances of Arabian mate or Vukovic mate. So Spassky reroutes his knight to f6, which is the better square from where it can create a mating nets. So see, if it goes to h8, we are managing to create Arabian mate threat. If it goes to f8, we are able to create the Vukovic mate threat. So that what's happened in the game: knight f6, bishop d1 and rook b7. And finally we have this same domination theme in the position, and after f2 e6 we allow black to make a queen. If he queens, of course we have rook f7 and Vukovic mate. So in the game rook d5 was played, and now king h6, and after rook h5 king g6 there are no longer any logical checks, and rook f7 mate is coming next. Hence Bent Larsen resigned and Spassky won quite a nice game. So this was about the Vukovic mate. Now I have a puzzle for you. Let's jump to that game now. Okay, so for the puzzle for the Vukovic mate, this is the game that we are going to look at, played by Bobby Fischer from the black side, and this is one of his greatest games. I think you can go and check Donald Byrne versus Robert James Fischer. Let's just go through the moves quickly, and we will stop at the position where I want to give you a puzzle. So a Grunfeld was played, d takes c4, queen takes c4, c6, and going forward, bishop to g4 was played, another typical way to play this position, knight a4, and then couple of exchanges happened. Let me jump to the position where there was a brilliancy actually. Yeah, this knight takes c3 was played in this position, and after the move bishop c5, rook f8 check, king f1. In this position, Fischer actually played the brilliancy. So he played the brilliant move in this position, which is bishop to e6, sacrificing his whole queen. But you can see what happened in the game after taking this queen. Bishop takes c4 happened. Check. The king has to go to g1, and now this bishop and knight are going to make the king dance. So knight e2, king f1, knight takes d4 check, king g1, knight e2 check. This particular mechanism is known as windmill in chess. You must have seen that famous game where there was a windmill, and finally Fischer just recaptured this piece and then opened up his rook as well. So if you see the material, I think black has what does black have here? Black has two bishops and couple of pawns for the queen here. So he won one of the rooks. So now the material balances against change. This is two bishops and a rook for the queen, and also two pawns. One pawn at the moment, but he eventually won the second one. And you can see that the material is already, I think, in favor of black here. And after exchanging the rooks, black got this wonderful piece play now, and now he in fact has two bishops and a rook. So by material standpoint it's already 11 points plus this two pawns. So black is already ahead in material, and he later on launched a checkmate attack. This knight on e4 is also so beautiful piece, and it was just a matter of technique for Fischer to find this attacking sequence, and I would stop at this point. So this is a black to move and win, and this is your puzzle number 4, I believe. Yeah, this is puzzle number 4. Since it's the fourth checkmate pattern that we have looked at today, Vukovic made, this is puzzle number 4 that you are going to type the answer of this one in the comment section. Okay, so let's go through the remaining patterns. Now you can see we have covered the major section in this 8 patterns as well. So we have covered the suffocation mate, we have covered the swallow's tail mate, we have covered the triangle mate, and also we have now covered the Vukovic mate. So the next two patterns are, I think, fairly known to you. They are fool's mate and scholar's mate. But in them also I have got some interesting examples for you. So you can try to solve it. uh, I won't be giving a puzzle on Fool's Mate and Scholar's Mate, I think. But yeah, for Railroad Mate and Reti's Mate. So the next four patterns are already kind of known to you. So I will go through them also now. So let's start with the Fool's Mate. As the name suggests, Fool's Mate. If one side plays like a fool, he can lose the chess game in two moves. And if white plays, this is the particular. Now the it's very important to understand the mechanism, because this particular mechanism and this science of this fool's mate is going to explain you there are many positions actually where in fact it's not the fool's mate, but this check along this diagonal is actually the painful check. And very often you might miss such opportunities in your game where you would have this kind of a check and that would be usually decisive. So this is the fool's mate that everyone knows. If white pushes two pawns on the king side, the queen check ends the game, and this is the fool's mate. So this is one of the game where black played f6 and after d4 he played g5 and he got checkmated with the fool's mate. The thing is this diagonal, none of the black piece can actually block this check, and the king is very sensitive along this diagonal, so you should not play generally pawns on the king side. So this was one example, but this is not just what I want to show you. Now this game is interesting. d4, knight f6, knight d2, e5, a kind of a gambit line, we can say England gambit on move second, on move number 2. So d takes e5, knight g4, and this is very typical actually. Now you can see what I'm talking about. It's not only that you know that the g4, f4 and queen h4 is checkmate. That's not the fool's mate is all about. White played the move h3, and in this position this is not fool's mate or anything, but black has a winning move. Because of the threat of the fool's mate, black can finish off white here with a wonderful tactic. I think this deserves to be a puzzle, or no? I think this is also easy. So this won't be a puzzle. I think 4 puzzles is enough for you from this session. Yeah, I think you must have spotted there is only one idea in the position, and that is knight e3. And now you can see the queen is trapped, so it's smothered mate to the queen, we can say. Knight is just threatening to take the queen. There is no way she can escape, and f takes e3 will be forced, but that will lead to checkmate. Now you can see the point is the fool's mate. Using the threat of fool's mate, we managed to play a tactic that won us the queen. So better is, I think, to move the knight and give away the queen. It's not really better, it's also bad, but yeah, instead of getting checkmated with the fool's mate, this particular thing will result in a checkmate. And that is the point of the fool's mate, that this diagonal is crucial in the fool's mate, and whenever you weaken it or whenever you can force open it, this will usually lead to your win. Actually, there is one nice line in Caro-Kann defense. Since I play Caro-Kann, I can show it to you. Let me just flip the board. So e4 c6, this is the Caro-Kann defense. d4 d5, knight c3, d takes e4, knight takes e4. Now there are 3 options. Knight f6 is the move, bishop f5 is the move, knight d7 is the move. So in the Karpov variation, there is a mainline theory starting with the move knight g5. Now here also there are 3 main moves. This is the move, bishop c4 is the second move, and knight g5 is the third move. But the main line starts with the move knight to g5. And the point is black should play knight gf6 here, and the usual move h6 would lose for black in this position because of the move knight to e6. And now black loses here. I give it to you to figure out how queen a5 and queen b6 are bad for black, but they are also bad. But the point is, since we are discussing the fool's mate, f e6 is met by queen h5, and black loses here because of the fool's mate. So you can see that this fool's mate is not really only beginner's topic. This is also applicable at the top level and also at our level, where this important theoretical discussions are based on such nice tactics. So f e6, queen h5, and it would be a fool's mate once again. You can see from mainline theory we have ended up in a fool's mate, so not a bad example. So this was about fool's mate. Now let's go to the scholar's mate. Another thing that I have used myself when I started out chess. I won 1 or 2 local tournaments with it. So we bring the queen out, we bring the bishop out, and we attack the weak pawn on f7. Now this is another very big topic. In any e4 openings, you would often see that this f7 pawn is a weakness, and you would see number of times there are sacrifices like bishop takes f7, or sometimes knight e5, as we saw in legal's mate. It was also targeting the f7 pawn. So the move knight f6 would result in the this particular mate known as the scholar's mate. Now I would actually talk about how to defend this particular thing. You should play knight c6 here, which is okay. After bishop c4, you should play g6. Now queen f3 is usually played again to threaten a mate. You go knight f6, queen b3 is I guess usual reaction, and you can just play the move queen e7 here, and it's completely fine for black. Black will just play bishop g7 castle. This knight will go to d4 with tempo, and yeah, black just has a great position. uh, I believe that there is also sometimes knight a5 possible. I don't think here it is a good move, but yeah, queen e7 is certainly the safer move. But yeah, you can check the other move as well if it's possible. Then you can play that. But queen e7 is the safest, and this is how you can refute the scholar's mate idea. So let's go to the next example of the scholar's mate. Now this is the variety that I used to play. That now this is same. This is the classic scholar's mate, by the way. Sometimes what I used to do, I used to bring the queen to f3 and then go get the knight to g5 and then play the move queen takes f7, which also results in a checkmate. So this is another variant of a scholar's mate, we can call it. So that was about fool's mate and scholar's mate. Now let's go to the next topic. Wait, it looks like I have one more example on the scholar's mate. So e4, e5. Now this is one of my games where I just started to play chess. So bishop c4, knight c6, queen f3. Again, I went for this plan. Since there are many beginners also who might be watching this, I'll just tell you that knight h6 is a way to stop this particular checkmate. When queen takes f7 would be met with knight takes f7. Very often people just put their bishop and queen blindly on this two square and just take on f7 without noticing that black has in fact played this. So what I usually used to do is play d3 here in order to eliminate this knight first and then take the pawn on f7. And after d6, bishop takes h6, g takes h6, queen takes f7. Now this is another way you might get a scholar's mate in, but really this is a topic for the above 1300, above 1400, I think level. So yeah, we will not focus much on this easy topics. We will go to the next topic, which is the railroad mate, and I have already given the introduction for this topic. So let me first get a diagram that explains the railroad mate. Okay, now this is something interesting that I have tried to create here, that tells you the difference between the kill box mate and the railroad mate. So if it would be black to move, then it would end up in a kill box mate. Now let's say white plays some move like I don't know, some move like queen h7, let's say. Now it would be a kill box mate followed by a railroad mate. I'm sorry, it will be yeah, it will be a kill box mate followed by. So we start with the railroad mate. So king is already on this track, and we go for this checks. Now this is the concept of the railroad mate, that you drive the king to the edge of the board by checking the king, and at the end it will result in, so king b7, queen c6, and at the end it will result in a kill box mate. So this is the concept of the railroad checkmate, and that's the reason I said that these patterns are usually existing together. So it will be railroad mate at the start, as we saw all this starting checks. This is the concept of the railroad mate, where you start driving the king to the edge of the board, and now depending on the positioning of the other pieces, it would either result in a kill box mate, as it did in this case, or it will result in a triangle mate. If in this position it would have been white to move, and if white starts checking the king like the same way, now it resulted in something different, not in a kill box mate, but this is the pattern that we have just looked at like 20-30 minutes ago, known as the triangle mate. Because the journey of the king ended here, the pawn on g7, we call it a triangle mate. So now it must be very clear to you that it would be a railroad mate followed by either a kill box mate or the triangle mate, one of these two patterns. So this is the concept of the railroad checkmate. Let me see if I have some examples on this one as well. Yeah, so let's go to this position, and let's, yeah, this is a good position, I think, for me to stop and to ask you to find a move here for white pieces. So this is white to move and win. um I don't think this will be a puzzle again. Four puzzles are enough, so I would show the answer of this one. But you can see that black's king has been brought into the white camp here, and it's very unsafe here. But you should calculate properly and finish off. See, finishing off an opponent is a difficult thing. Like Kramnik has said, winning a one position is the toughest thing in chess, and which is absolutely correct. Usually, players will try to defend to the best. So, from white, you have to be accurate in order to finish off the opponent. And white found quite a nice solution, again showing the understanding of the pattern. So, queen d4 check, sacrificing the bishop, queen d3 check, king b2, setting up the king on the railway track, we can say, and then queen a3. And now you can see the queen and rook are brought into this special role, and now it was just a railroad checkmate. Now it ended up in a slightly different pattern, but yeah, it's still now this is the example of a railroad checkmate, because after king to e2, rook to e1, it would be a checkmate. Now, it did not end in a triangle mate or the kill box mate, hence it is a classic example of a railroad mate. But it is quite important to see that how the queen from d4, queen from h4 was transferred to a3 without losing any time. So queen d4, king c2, queen d3 check, forcing king b2 and queen a3. So the queen which was on h4 without losing any time by sacrificing a bishop has landed on a3, and we have managed to get this railroad checkmate in. So that's the point of the railroad checkmate. Let's see if we have one more example. I guess there is. Now this is the game of Adolf Anderson, and let me see where we can go. Yeah, once again here you can see rook to f3 was played, king takes a2, queen e2 check, sacrificing the rook, and then from here the railroad mate started, queen e1, king c2, queen b1. And now you can see again this rook and queen. So you can see how by using the technique players are arranging their pieces, so it improves your technique. This will end up in a railroad mate. So very important to see this move that Adolf Anderson found here, this move rook f3 check. Very often you are afraid of sacrificing the pawns and something, but it's about the positioning of the pieces. Queen e2 again, it's kind of a big lawnmower mate here if the rook is not taken. So rook had to be taken, and then this little sequence of playing rook b3. Now king a1 would be of course queen b2 checkmate. So he's seen that already that king c1 has to be played, and after queen e1 he's getting his queen to b1 with check. Very important. And usually if you are getting some piece with check into a good position, you should always try to improve its position. So position of the queen was improved, and then it was followed by the railroad mate. So you can see it's quite an important pattern. So the next example, let me see what's the next. Yeah, this is, we are looking at it from black's perspective actually. Let me see. Yeah, again you can see here rook takes f3 check. You would only see such moves when you get the pattern. So rook c2 check, king f3, and now rook f2 check. And again you already know the mechanism. King g3, queen f4. Now this would here actually result in a kill box mate. So I would just put it on the board, and rook to h2. And this is the kill box mate that we have discussed. So in this case, rook take f3 opened up the cleared up the third and second rank for the other rook to act, and just by checking the king twice, king to f1 would be met with queen f2, and it would be checkmate. Same for king e1, it would be checkmate like this, I think, at the least. So rook king f3 was forced after rook to f2 check, and then rook to f2 here, sorry, after rook to c2, king f3 was forced, and now rook f2, king g3, queen f4 check, and rook h2, and we have ended up in a kill box mate which started out as a railroad mate. So another instructive example of the same thing. And now let's go to the last pattern for today. Now I haven't selected actually a lot of so this will be the last game for this video and also for this checkmate pattern series. This game has been covered already, I think, in one of the checkmate patterns. So the last mate is going to be Reti's mate. And the reason I'm not going to cover it in detail is that we have already covered the diagonal corridor mate. Now this is very similar to that one, but as it was played in the game of Richard Reti versus Savili Tartakor, the checkmate pattern has been given the name of the great Richard Reti. So this is the game that I have by heart already. So this was a Karokan again. So d4, knight e4, knight f6, queen d3, a rare line. Knight takes f6 is the usual way. So queen d3, and black thought that he will be creative here and play the e5. Now his point is after d5, of course, not to exchange the queens and end up in a pawn down endgame. But queen a5 check, bishop d2, and queen takes e5. And white just castle along here. And this shows the important thing in chess. The development is always more important than any other almost any other aspect of the position. Like very often you may sacrifice one pawn, two pawns, sometimes even a piece. If you are keeping the black king in the center, that is worth it. And this long castle shows actually fantastic understanding of the position, that this knight on e4 is actually left unfreezed, but white can't black can't really take it, because queen takes e4 would lose to a rook e1, and the queen will be lost because of this pin. And knight takes e4, as it was played in the game, resulted in the brilliancy that I believe most of you will know about this brilliancy. If you don't, then it's puzzle for you. White to play and win. I believe many chess players, and when they get to a certain level, they already know that this pattern exists in chess, which is a absolutely brilliant game played by Richard Reti. So queen to d8 is the brilliant move, and after king take d8, again the most powerful weapon in chess. Now there is a decision to be made: bishop a5 or bishop g5. Both are double checks. So you have to see where the king is going, and accordingly choose the correct discovered check. That is a double check in the position. So bishop g5 check is the correct way. The reason is after king e8, rook d8, we have the opera mate, and after king c7, this checkmate pattern has been given the name of Richard Reti, and hence it is known as the Reti's mate with the move bishop d8. It basically displays the X-raying feature of the bishop. Like the bishop also controls the square behind the king, so the X-ray like feature is of the bishop is explained here, which is guarded with the rook, so it can't be taken, and rook also controls this too, and the bishop covers the square along the diagonal. So it's very similar to the diagonal corridor mate that we have seen, but the specific construction, as it was from the game of Richard Reti, it has been given the name of Reti's mate. So these are all the 8 patterns that I wanted to discuss. As you can see in the Reti's mate as well, it's not something special of a topic, it's just a construction that has been given a name. So we have covered 8 patterns in this video, starting with Suffocation Mate. The bishop suffocates the king while the knight checkmates it. The bishop and knight combo. In the Swallow's Stalemate, it was a heavy piece, usually checkmating the king with the support of another heavy piece. And note that the unfortunate pieces of the side that is getting checkmated is actually the reason that checkmate occurs. The triangle mate results from the railroad mate, as we have already seen. Railroad mate will lead to the kill box mate or the triangle mate. So in triangle mate, there is one of the piece, one of the pawn from the enemy side, sorry, the one of the pawn from the own side that is getting the checkmated helps us, and the two heavy pieces, usually queen and rook, are checkmating the king. Queen is generally covers the rest of the escape squares and guards the rook as well. In the Vukovic mate, we have seen this Aronian Vesliso game where knight and rook in this specific construction checkmates the king. Fool's mate and scholar's mate is already known to you. No explanation. But in a fool's mate as well, we have discussed example like how it influences the theory, like how it is very important in many of the variations. Even though it doesn't appear in our games, its existence still influences particular theoretical lines. So it's also important from that perspective. Scholar's mate is not important from that perspective. I believe it's just a beginner trap. That's it. And a railroad mate is the one when we set up the king in the right motion with the help of our major pieces, and then we drive it to the edge of the board, and it ends up in the triangle mate or the kill box mate or in some other patterns, as we have seen from the examples about the railroad mate. And the Reti's mate is this famous game in the Karokan against Sabeli Tartakova, and this particular X-ring pattern of the bishop as is helping us in checkmating the king. So yeah, this is it about all the patterns. So we have covered 36 patterns in this whole series. I have spent a lot of time actually searching the games. As you can see, this particular database only contains about 26 games. In the earlier ones, there used to be 16 or sometimes 20 games. So I spent a lot of time. I enjoyed going through this process of finding games and analyzing the games for you, and I hope they are also useful for you. As a result of this series, I would expect that each player should develop this feeling for the position, that whenever there is a checkmate, you should not miss it. You should try to combine this all the patterns, try to see that how the best positioning of the pieces is, and then which pieces are really required in checkmating the king, which pieces you can exchange off, what are the defenders of the king. Gives you some idea regarding the positioning of your pieces, and basically in general how to attack. It helps a great deal, because we have just seen how to finish off opponent in 36 ways. So it also gives you some idea about attacking techniques as well. So which direction you should think while checkmating the king. This is very important from all those aspects. And also it shows us the different material relations that result in a checkmate, like the knight and rook combos. There are some checkmate patterns. The bishop knight combo, there are some checkmate patterns. So in general, I think it's quite useful, and it's also important for you to work on other aspects of the game. So since we have covered all the checkmate patterns now, we'll see something different from the next lecture. And yeah, till then, take care and bye bye.